They can fix that in Syria.
Yeah, they can fix that in
They can
Syria.
fix anything in Syria. You won't feel a thing.
Well, you might feel a thing at first, but after a while you won't feel anything. We'll deal with that later. We're in Getting to Know Jesus, Volume 11. Lesson number 145 on pages 153 and 165 in your book.
It's going in and out.
It's going in and out. Well, that's
distracting.
Maybe if I put it on this side, that'll work better because I'll be over here a little bit. Maybe that's the secret. I don't know. We'll work at it one day at a time. And if I'm too loud, I'm too loud. If I'm too quiet,
clip it to your lower lip.
That would.
There you go.
Might be a little too loud. We're on pages 153 to 165. The Bible text is on pages 154 to 157. The lesson notes are on pages 158 to 163. And Jesus is questioned by the priest. So, we're going to talk tonight about how to handle critics. So that'll be get us something to connect with. Here's again our timeline. We're down here at the bottom. Just finishing up the last bit of it. And I'm still cutting in and out. When we do the lessons at Kingdom Life University, I'm sure they will fix those sound issues, so we'll have good sound all the way through the whole thing. But until then, we're doing the best we can with what we've got. And let's see now. Here's another little trick. Maybe if I wear this on front instead of on back, it still can't pick up a signal. So.
We can hear you.
You can hear me. I can talk loud enough, but I kind of want the amplification partly so the camera can pick it up a little better.
It's got a short.
I've got a short. No, I've got long pants on. I've got a short.
You should grow taller.
I should. I'm tall enough, my feet never fail to reach the floor. Well, we're over here. Our arrow hasn't moved yet. We're in lesson 145. Jesus is arrested, tried by the Sanhedrin. And we're going to deal with Judas' suicide before that gets over with. And I'll cut in and out. So, doesn't it distress you when someone criticizes you or questions why you're doing what you do?
Yeah, annoying.
Maybe you're not doing anything wrong, but somebody verbally attacks you as though you should be thrown in jail for what you are doing. Now, we can think of where that's going on. Christians being persecuted, Jews being persecuted. Glenn cleared his throat. You ought to be thrown in jail for that.
You need a glass of water.
Might not be a bad idea. You might even be doing something for other people's benefit, like standing up for traditional marriage or against abortion.
Amen.
And get thrown in jail because you're doing something for other people's benefit. Yet there are times when people would rather attack than see the value and appreciate what you have done. So, heads you win, tails you're going to be persecuted anyhow. Come with the territory. Well, Jesus is not going to get any sleep. He'll be kept up all night. He'll be nailed to the cross before he gets to rest. And you're not going to get any rest hanging there on a cross with your hands hurting, your feet hurting, your chest hurting, your arms hurting right here. It's not going to be restful at all until he escapes this life. Knowing what is coming, how does Jesus respond to those that are criticizing him? We're in Matthew chapter 26.
He denies it as food. Oh, yeah,
That's being picked up on the camera.
Good.
Uh-oh, good.
We're in Matthew chapter 26, verses 57 to 61, Mark 14, verses 53 to 59, Luke 22, verses 54 to 55, and John 18, verses 13 to 24. And you're going to notice how each one contributes something to this story, and putting them together, you get a fuller picture of what went on than you do just going from one gospel. Jesus has been arrested by brought to the high priest, to Annas for questioning. He's going to be kept up all night. Knowing what is coming, how does Jesus respond to those who are criticizing him? How does he deal with these people who are criticizing him for doing such wonderful things? Well, first of all, sometimes you don't want to fight when you're outnumbered. Matthew 26:57, Mark 14:53, Luke 22:54, John 18, verses 13 and 14. Those who arrested Jesus, seizing him, they led him away. They took him into the house of Caiaphas, the high priest. Now, John says they took him first to Annas. Annas was the high priest who bought his priesthood. Caiaphas was the one that by legal Levite succession was the real high priest. But they went to Annas first, who was the father-in-law of Caiaphas, the high priest that year. Caiaphas was the one who advised the Jews it would be better if one man, good man, died for the people. He didn't know how prophetic those words were when he made them. And all the chief priests and the elders of the law were assembled. They came together. So they did a little rounding up of all the leaders, or at least most of them, there when they brought Jesus in. Jesus has now been arrested by a mob and brought to Annas, the Roman appointed high priest, along with the teachers of the law and the elders for their initial questioning. It's late at night. He'll get no sleep or respect from here on till his death. From the arresting mob to the initial inquisition, Jesus knows that this is not the time or place to engage. Now, we all know that he could have called 10,000 angels. He could have told the apostles, draw your swords and fight. And he could have brought in a whole army, and Richard did some research, and that cohort, that mob that came out to arrest Jesus, could very easily have been 400 to 500 men. With weapons and guns, right.
For one person.
Swords and spears and clubs and so forth. 500 against 13 or 12 because Judas had left. And maybe a couple of other stragglers that were followers.
Judas joined the other side.
Do what?
He was among the 500.
Yeah, he went to the other side.
All of that, but he would have been violating his father's will.
That's right.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which we know. But when you're confronted, sometimes if you're outnumbered, it may be time to just kind of be quiet right now and engage later. You got walking down the street in a strange city and a group of people with that no good look on their face, you might decide it's better to turn and walk the other way than to continue on and try to engage them and see if you can prevail over them, unless you've got some persuasion that they don't know about yet. But that's a different story. There is a time when Jesus will confront his accusers. But right now, his best defense is to remain silent and let them expose their own sinful behavior. Notice what distinguishes Jesus at this time is his ability to maintain his composure. Now, every one of us have been in situations where there was that little rage going inside you. And you wanted to give them what you believe they had coming. And maybe they did have it coming. But you knew that now's not a good time for any one of a number of reasons. He knows who he is. Jesus is confident in his mission. And even though this is horrible treatment and just the beginning of it, he spent at least an hour or two or maybe 3 in prayer. And his spirit is armed and ready for battle. So he's ready for what's coming. As they say, some situations where there may be a time to resist, flee, or fight is not right now, but later. Help may be on the way if you can wait. Those who are going to attack you may expose their evil intentions if you just wait. Have you ever been in a situation where somebody was trying to accuse you of something? Maybe they were misrepresenting the truth, like some of the political ads we've seen on TV lately. And if you wait just a bit, they will expose their hidden agenda, and they may just outfox themselves in their intended evil. Now, it doesn't always happen, but a lot of times it can. Julie?
My dad ran across situations like that, and he always just said he was going to give them enough rope so they can hang themselves. You know? Just be quiet and let them take, let them take themselves down.
They'll think, oh, I got to say something. And they'll say something, and it'll be the thing that, okay, we got you. Yeah. When you feel outnumbered, consider if it is now the time to engage or whether it's better to endure this current event, even though it may cause pain and suffering, and engage at a later time when you have a better advantage over those who are challenging you. Now, unfortunately, there are some Christians and even some Jews over in other parts of the world where they're just not going to get an opportunity to engage later. And engaging now, they're so outnumbered. Talk about make your blood boil. They kind of make your blood boil a little bit.
Oh, all the
Make my
time.
blood boil.
Oh, all the time.
But,
I get so mad and so.
All we can do right now is pray.
That's what I do.
Most of all, that they will not relinquish their faith in Jesus Christ, even in the face of death. And be grateful that we're not there yet. Well, here's another key point. Don't be afraid in their midst of your critics. Matthew 26:58, Mark 14:54, Luke 22:55, and John 18 verses 15 to 18.
Turn your mic off.
Well, I turned the mic on. They won't hear it anyhow, so it never doesn't make. But Peter, another disciple were following Jesus at a distance, right up to the courtyard of the high priest. Now, John mentions another disciple. We know that that was the Apostle John.
Yeah.
Let's go on here. But this disciple was known to the high priest, and he went in with Jesus into the high priest's courtyard, but Peter had to wait outside at the door. Now the other disciple, who was known to the high priest, came back and spoke to the girl on duty there and brought Peter in. It was cold, and the servants and the officials kindled a fire. They stood around a fire that they had made to keep warm in the middle of the courtyard, and they sat down together. Peter also was standing there with them, warming himself. And he sat down with the guards to see the outcome, and warmed himself at the fire. While Jesus is going through the initial questioning by the teachers of the law and the elders, Peter and John managed to get admission into the courtyard. This requires a little bit of bravery on their part, since they're kind of like sneaking into the enemy camp, per se. They may not be labeled as enemies yet, but it's still, there is a little bit of risk involved, especially since we're going to find out in a minute they're afraid of being exposed, or at least one of them is. They've been warned of Jesus' pending execution. They've witnessed the diabolical arrest just moments earlier in the Garden of Gethsemane. And again, composure is a key element in Peter and John's character and in Jesus' character. If you know the truth and you know who God is in you, there is nothing, absolutely nothing. Let me emphasize that word just in case you didn't get it. There is nothing that anyone can do to you to take away your joy, your peace, your safety, and security. We've talked about this before. They can take my life, but they cannot take my joy, my peace, my safety, my security, my soul. That belongs to God. I dread, I hurt for those who've had their heads lopped off. It's just builds a little rage. But more important that they be faithful through that trial.
Amen.
Our history from the day the church was started until God burns this world up with fire will be a history of Christians being killed simply because they dare to believe that Jesus is the Christ, the Son of God. Bob?
I like the verse that says, and they overcame by the blood of the Lamb and by the word of their testimony, and they loved not their lives even unto death.
Well, yeah.
Revelation.
And so there's a testimony to those who are dying for their faith right now. If you know the truth and you know who God is, there's nothing that anyone can do to take your peace, joy, and love. Life is about being faithful to God and not necessarily about avoiding pain and unfair circumstances. Now, we do want to avoid pain as much as we reasonably can. We want to avoid unfair circumstances as much as we can. I don't see any of you buying passports over to those countries where Christians are being murdered. And I would advise you not to do so. Dead Christians don't witness very well after they're dead. They might witness in dying, but I think we can talk to a lot more people when we're alive than we can after we're gone. Bad things happen to all sorts of people, including Christians that are being persecuted or simply going through a testing of their faith. We may not be getting our heads cut off or being threatened of being shot or anything like that. But I would just about venture, if we had time to do it, every one of us in this room could label some way where you are being tested, where your faith is being tested. Are you really trusting God, or are you trying to take matters into your own hands? Are you really trusting God to take care of this issue, or are you thinking, God's not listening, you got to do it yourself or it isn't going to get done? Now sometimes God needs you to do your part, but there's a part that we have to just turn over, let go and let God. Isn't that the phrase?
Yeah.
Let go and let God. Our challenge is to endure the trials and show the presence of Jesus Christ in our lives, even whether the trials are fair or unfair. Show the presence of Jesus in our life. If we remain faithful to God, there's nothing man can do to us that will take away God's power or God's promises. Absolutely nothing. Even if they kill us, they cannot separate us from God. We need not fear what man can do to us if our faith is in God. Just like He is not going to protect Jesus from His coming pain and death, God may not prevent your persecution or death, but He will save your soul for eternity. Now some of you have been on this earth 60, 70, maybe more than 70, 80 plus years. Some of us are a little younger than that still. But we all know that our day today could be our last day. And so life, and we're going to spend a lot more time in eternity than we have spent on this earth. That is far greater than anything, our life, our eternal life is far greater than anything man can do to us. And that's why we consider Jesus for who He is and for what He did, and why it's so important for us to learn about Him and follow Him with our lives. Well, here's our photograph. This is a church that commemorates the place where Jesus prayed in the Garden of Gethsemane. All we can say is it's in the Garden of Gethsemane. We have no clue where it was to where He actually prayed. Richard?
Kind of interesting, when Queen Helena, Constantine's mother, came back to Palestine and marked all the places holy to Christianity, and she built a church over them. They say the Sea of Galilee is so holy that if she could, she would have built a church over the whole Sea of Galilee. That's like building a church over Lake Parker.
Well, Sea of Galilee is a little bigger than Lake Parker.
Oh, it is.
26 by 13, if I remember my...
Pretty big cathedral.
13 by 8 or something like that. It's miles. It's pretty good size, yeah.
Have you been in Galilee? This friend of mine, used to be, brought back from Israel a bottle of the Sea of Galilee. It's all oily.
It was?
Well, that's
It is.
Dead Sea water's oily. The Dead Sea water. The Sea of Galilee is just like Lake Parker, fresh water.
Galilee's got fresh water flowing in.
Yeah, but the
Dead
other
Sea
is
would
oily.
not.
Dead Sea's got an oily feel to it. It feels like baby oil.
Well, let's get back to dealing with the critics. Always speak the truth. Now, John enlightens us on this one. John 18, 19 to 24. Meanwhile, the high priest questioned Jesus about His disciples and His teaching. I have spoken to you openly, to the world, Jesus replied. I always taught in the synagogues or at the temple where all the Jews come together. I said nothing in secret. Why question me? Ask those who heard me. Surely they know what I said. When Jesus said this, one of the officials nearby struck him in the face. Is this the way you answer the high priest? He demanded. Jesus said, if I said something wrong, Jesus replied, testify as to what is wrong. But if I spoke the truth, why did you strike me? There is a time to engage your accuser. Then Annas, who sent him, still bound to Caiaphas, the high priest. So Annas questions Jesus. He answers him by reminding Jesus answers Annas by reminding him that he's been teaching in the temple. Jesus has been teaching in the temple every day. In the synagogues every day. It's not like he's doing some subversive underground movement. He's right up there public. Jesus challenges Annas to ask those who heard him teach to see if there's anything worthy of his being treated this way. One of the officials strikes Jesus in the face and reprimands him for challenging the high priest. And Jesus demands that they show where he said anything wrong. Prove that what I told you is untrue. Don't just go out there throwing out cheap, lame allegations. You show me some concrete proof that what I said is untrue. And Jesus spoke the truth. If Jesus had spoken wrongly, then the official was wrong in striking him. If Jesus had spoken truthfully, the official would be wrong in striking him. Jesus is not afraid to speak up for his rights. With this, Annas decides it's time to send Jesus to Caiaphas, the high priest who was high priest by Jewish law, not by Roman influence. After being sent for many questions, sign up for many questions, Jesus finally confronted his accusers. He does not try to excuse himself from their custody, but he strongly accuses them of wrongful behavior in striking him. If you're unjustly treated, you have a right, if not an obligation, to bring the circumstances and truth to the situation. We are required to speak in the presence of our accusers. If we are required to speak in the presence of our accusers, our words must be true and just, not just an attempt to try to excuse any wrong behavior on our part. And sometimes that may require you saying, yes, I was wrong, I made a mistake. Yes, even Christians sometimes still make mistakes.
People don't realize that, though, that we're not infallible. They expect us to act perfect all the time.
And so, when they know you're a Christian, you're going to be under a little extra scrutiny.
All the time. It's God's fault for everything that's happening in this world. That's what I was told this morning. I looked at my daughter and I said, how can you think that? Man brought this on.
That's right.
Well,
I said it.
yeah, but it's an interesting paradox. On the one hand, Christians are not perfect, just forgiven. That's not a license to sin like the world.
That's right.
Because the world is looking, and if they don't see change in your behavior, why should they change their behavior?
Yep, that's right. Because
There's a friend of mine at a minister's gathering for prayer back before the last election was trying to communicate when Christians get serious about getting to know Jesus and following Jesus with their life and teachings, then the non-Christians are going to say, oh, those Christians are getting serious. They're starting to act like Christians. We better start cleaning up our act. It will have that trickle-down effect. But as long as Christians are doing what the world's doing, why should the world care about what Christians are doing? Except to persecute Christians and, oh, you're a Christian and you did that? Some of you may have heard that phrase more than times than you want. You think you're better than us and you talk like that? I got on Facebook and made a little fuss about people that think they can use Jesus as a byword or God's name as a curse word.
yes.
We need to advise, especially Christians, to do that. Don't think about what they're saying, and they'll use Jesus and God and have no thought of reverence or respect when they do it. Well, let's go on a little further here. Let the critics expose their foolishness. Matthew 26:59-61, Mark 14:55-59. The chief priests and the whole Sanhedrin were looking for false evidence against Jesus so they could put him to death. Oh, what's that? False evidence. Their motives. But they did not find any. Though many false witnesses testified falsely and came forward against him, their statements did not agree.
Because they were lying.
They were lying. And one's lie didn't agree with the other one's lies, which said neither one of them were telling the truth.
Your own lies won't agree with your lies.
You'd think they could get together, at least tell the same lie, but evidently they didn't. The chief priests and the whole Sanhedrin were looking for false evidence. Matthew really likes to make that false word out there. Against Jesus so that they could put him to death. Okay, there we go. Finally, two came forward. Some stood up giving this false testimony about him. This fellow said, we heard him say, I would destroy this temple of God, man-made temple, and rebuild it in 3 days. In 3 days we'll build another not made by man. And yet even then, there were discrepancies. Their testimony did not agree. There were discrepancies in their testimony. And we're going to get the rest of this in actually lesson 146. I have to change that on the book. let them expose their foolishness. When Annas and Caiaphas tried to find some ground to accuse Jesus as worthy of death, he remained silent. He could have easily defended himself, but he knows his Father's purpose and simply waits for them to come up with something worthy of death. And it seems the more they try, the more they only succeed in exposing their hypocrisy, foolishness, and evil intentions. There is nothing legal or fair about this hearing.
That's
Monkey
true.
trial, kangaroo court,
It's a
what
mob.
other generalization you want to put to this? This is basically, yeah, a lynch mob.
Mob mentality.
Yeah.
Mob mentality. And
And
they've
they
got an
did it
evil
at
agenda.
night, and they did it at night, which is against the Jewish law.
They did it at night, which was against the Jewish law.
They're sneaky.
They were sneaking around.
They were sneaking around. There were several things that they did, and the book, we do talk about that in the lesson, that they violated the Jewish law in what they were doing. So how many times have you been silent when an adversary talked himself into an argument and exposed his motives and defeated his intentions? Now again, sometimes you just give them enough rope, they'll hang themselves. How often have you spoken and exposed your motives when it would have been better for you to have remained silent?
We never do that.
I wish.
Yeah.
If someone is trying to falsely accuse you or get you into trouble, they will most likely expose their wrong motives if you just remain silent and let them do all the talking. Or maybe a little hard to do sometimes. And that's where we sometimes get ourselves in trouble. We think we've got to help them along a little bit, and we say something, and oh, well, we cost ourselves our own problem. Morty?
Of course, this was totally one-sided. Totally one-sided. The only one there that was truthful and had any meaning was Christ himself. Everybody else was just a liar. Everybody else was anything goes just to get rid of this guy.
This is the danger of the mob mentality. And this is the danger of, Jesus has now gotten blacklisted by this group. And so truth is irrelevant. And fair is irrelevant. Julie?
Yeah, that's, I think, why so many of the stories they didn't match, was because everybody got wrapped up in that mob mentality, and they just start throwing accusations out, just to, the blood starts boiling, and they just join in the crowd.
Yeah. Martha?
Not to mention they got paid very well.
Oh, they probably got paid very well. I don't think they got 30 pieces of silver each.
No, but they got paid.
But they got paid, very likely. Just like a recent event where there were people shipped in from the outside to try to persuade the group that this thing that the people, local people, don't want, these outsiders say they do want.
Yeah.
Mob mentality. Well, our conclusion is this: you will always be those who are. There will always be those who are critics. I said that wrong, didn't I?
Yeah.
You will always.
You can read it.
You
if
will
you
always
want to.
those who
You
are
will
critics.
always those who are
There will
critics.
always be. You forgot the B.
There will always be those who are critics. And sometimes that may be you.
We're critiquing
Yeah,
him.
Pray.
You can put it on the wall up there.
Pray for it. Yeah, write a B right up there, and then I'll have to erase it off the wall after we turn the power off. Pray for wisdom to analyze the critique and speak the truth. Some criticism is valid,
Yes.
and we need to listen to it. But we need to weigh and discern, is this valid criticism, is something I need to correct and change? Or is this just hate speech, looking for a place to try to shame me and hurt me? Don't argue with a fool. The adage that I heard years ago, don't argue with a fool, some people will wonder which one's which.
My dad used to say he refused to engage in a battle of wits with an unarmed man.
Yes. With a
And they would
nitwit or
just sit there and
something
go,
like that.
huh?
Well, next week, Jesus' trial before the Jewish council will continue. How are they going to justify getting him executed? Come and see. We're going to turn over to page 164, break up into our discussion groups, and have some discussion time. You can follow us and stay in touch with what is happening with the Getting to Know Jesus Bible Study Ministry on Plaxo, Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, and watch our video clips on YouTube and GodTube. Getting to Know Jesus is sponsored by New Hope Gospel Ministries. If you'd like to follow along with us and start your Getting to Know Jesus Bible study group, or just pray for us or support our ministry, you can go to www.gettingtoknowjesus.org and find all the information that we have available for you. If you look at the lower right hand corner, there's a button where you can make a safe and secure donation to the Getting to Know Jesus Bible Study Ministry. Or you can go to the order page and order your Getting to Know Jesus books for your Bible study group. Thank you for stopping by, and keep us in your prayers and let us know how we can pray for you.